Hello, hello. This is day three of Android water animation in with OpenGL. And today there is a sense of urgency as well that has kicked in because it has become quite evident that this is going to take a bit of effort. So I think some sort of urgency would help. So today there is a dash of urgency sprinkled to the stream. Also, I'll make try and make sure that the stream covers the 7 to 8 hour duration that was promised earlier. Last couple of days, there were multiple issues because of which this was not happening. One was the internet issue, and generally health was also a bit worse. Now it is a bit better. Health is a bit better. That is a good thing. And yeah, so we'll try and uh, we'll try and enjoy this stream for sure, but we'll try and be urgent as well. But because there is a lot of work pending to complete this, basically. Let me check first whether the stream is live. This I have to do. There's a mandatory check. Since I am a new streamer, I am not very sure about all these things, so that is why I have to double check on all this. To complete this, basically. To complete this, basically. So we'll try and enjoy this stream for sure, but we'll try and be urgent as well. But because there is a lot of work pending to complete this, basically. Let me check first whether the stream is live. This I have to do. There's a mandatory check. Since I am a new streamer, yeah, so it is live. I was just listening to the sound whether it was okay. I mean, the sound gate filter could be better, but that is for another time. Uh, yeah. So where are we currently, right? So for that would be the first question that is getting asked. Currently, we are here. Let me just pull this. Yeah. Currently, we were looking into this. Oh man. We drew a sequence diagram yesterday and I didn't save it. I switched off my computer. So basically, what happened? Okay, maybe we can try and draw this sequence diagram quickly and then get it saved as well, right? Okay, that would be a solution basically. What is the buffer called? Frame buffer. Add my view. Add my view in XML and my view to my renderer. then my renderer to my renderer, add my view in XML, add as the renderer, then my renderer to my renderer. What needs to be done first? During init, create vertex text buffer. What else is there? Frame, raw list, and something else is there. Frame. And create, have multiple programs for OpenGL pipeline, add shaders for these shaders variable, this then on draw, initialize textures and frame buffer, on draw, do the initial manipulations on the frame buffer, my renderer on draw, use the output of initial manipulations from frame buffer to OpenGL frame. Excuse me. Yeah, so basically this is what we saw during while examining the code in the Stack Overflow. That we actually set the renderer, and after setting the renderer, we initialize the vertex frame buffer, vertex frame, and what is the other buffer? Texture. Yeah, and then after which we make sure that on create we have multiple programs. For example, we see there is only one program and a couple of shaders added to this program when we were using this, when we are writing our code. But in this case there are multiple programs available, and for each program there are corresponding shaders available. And in the next step we see that we initialize the textures and use the first program, which I think was named the filter program, which had couple of shaders associated with it, and we wrote the output to the frame buffer. And after which the next program was used to actually make sure that things were done from frame buffer to the OpenGL frame buffer, as in the custom frame buffer to the OpenGL frame buffer. That's how we made use of the two programs. And the final output is supposed to contain all the things that we were supposed to do in the program. I will save this actually in our doc. Yeah, yeah, this should suffice. Yesterday I didn't save this. But yeah, I think this kind of serves as the initial starting point of today's session. In today's session, what we would want to do is ideally start by using a frame buffer. So first goal. I think our goal was to first to get water droplet moving down, but I think now that has been subdivided into many goals. First, we thought getting the water droplet moving down was going to be easier, but now we are identified that we might require a frame buffer for this. So we need to get frame buffer up and working. After which we'll try and figure out what were the issues. There were other issues as well, I think, with respect to a shader, which we need to figure out as well. But first, we need to try and understand how to use the frame buffer object. Yeah. So this needs to be urgent. I have a tendency of spacing out a bit, but I'll bring myself back as fast as possible and then make sure that the sense of urgency that has been added to this particular stream remains throughout. So yeah. So next goal, next sub goal. Get use frame buffer object. So my general idea is have two programs. In one program, associate the in one program associate the what do we call associate the shaders. In other, directly use the directly use the frame buffer object. Yeah, this is my goal at least now. So eventually what we would like to do is we would like to make sure that the texture that has been part of the first rendering, right, uh, remains as input for the subsequent rendering. So this will happen, but in subsequent rendering, we will be using the texture, right? Something like this, right? Mm, I think first, I think we will get many things clear if we use a frame buffer object and do things. I think that will sort many of the stuff, which will help us decide better the next subcode, I guess. So yeah, we'll move forward from here. So this is the next sub goal as of now. That is the next sub goal as of now. Not it is the next sub goal, and I need to understand how this texture object is saved as well, right? As in how texture is um, uh, remains as an output, and how can it be saved in some location, etc., etc. Right? Because basically that texture is needs to be used for multiple iterations and all that. So maybe we can put it in a temporary location, copy the frame buffer, then is copied to the main memory, and then this older texture can be attached and reused, and etc., etc. If that can be done, it would be very ideal. So yeah, I think this is should be a good starting point for that. Yeah. Oh, 1 second. Hello, hello. How's the voice now? I think voice is something that needs of concern now. I'll just check the stream again to check whether the voice is correct. The sense of urgency that has been added to this particular stream remains throughout. Of concern now. I'll just check the stream again to check whether the voice is correct. Yeah, for voice seems fine, I guess. But yeah, voice seems correct, I guess. So that shouldn't be of any concern as of now, at least. So yeah, so that is the next sub goal, having a frame buffer and having two programs. In one program associate the shaders and the others directly use the frame buffer object. Maybe we'll copy this to some resource folder, a raw folder, because I want things to compile. This will act as some sort of pointer to us to make sure that we are doing things correctly. We can remove the minor. Okay. So we need to be creating a frame buffer object, right? Now we'll just check what all the commands that are there with frame buffer as keyword, right? I mean, that could be a good starting point to get things up and rolling. We'll just note it down in the um, uh, text file. We'll just keep everything outside here itself and then do one copy paste to our text file. This is just to get a higher level view of what is happening with respect to this particular keyword. I think I should more vocalize myself, but yeah, this is just basic search and copy paste work. So I think there are like 11 lines sprinkled across the program, across the class. Just put it in. Yeah, this is here. I mean, the color is of whatever the scheme and theme was there. Maybe we might change the color. Uh, these are the lines. Does it look bad? Kind of looks jarring, but I'm not sure why this changing color is not coming. Style is fine. Colors. Yeah, I'm not sure of this. Maybe we might have to work like this. But let us inspect what are the 11 clients, right? One is the initialization of the int buffer. Next is the codes of the shaders, right? Frame buffer shader. Okay. So there is a frame buffer shader. Okay, and there is the corresponding load shader, and you get the shader loaded. Then you have generate frame buffers. Okay. Then there is a bind frame buffer. Okay. Then bind frame buffer texture 2D. Okay. Then there is a bind frame buffer again. Bind frame buffer. Lot of time bind frame buffer is uh, being called and frame buffer is getting initialized as well. Okay. So basically what are the bind frame buffer is getting called many times, like 4 or 5 times. And then there is a generation of frame buffer and generation of actual allocation of in buffer for the frame buffer. Yeah. And the frame buffer is just integer, I guess. So yeah. Yeah, this seems fine, I guess. This is how the we just started off by just going through the code and just checking for the keyword for frame buffer, and then we just copy pasted it here, which seems as a good starting point for us to do the things, but it is not everything. So yeah. Um, Now then we have to go through our code and maybe have places in which these could be inserted and why or when these could be inserted, right? Let's first just do a sanity test on our code and just run the program and see if it works as expected to see that the base is correct. Then we will just make sure that you are using the frame buffer and doing all this and we still get the answer, right? We are running the code. And since this is a smaller program, the code running as such will not take that much of time. Uh, but yeah. Acha, the raw resource naming is not correct. There are no errors currently. We did some sort of manipulation in the shader, hence we are getting this above below thing. We'll correct that part as well. Yeah, this is minus 1000, right? This one. This should work. Yeah, this is fine, I guess. Check one. Yep, it's working great. So yeah, the initial checkpoint is correct. Now we need to insert all this code, right? In some place or the other. We have 11, now this is the start point. We have 11 statements that we have to insert throughout the program. We have to identify where, and then on going while doing these things, we will have to make sure that things are inserted properly throughout the code. Throughout the code. Also, if there is a power cut, then it is also possible that the stream might end. But then I'll restart the stream again after the power resumes. So that could also be a possible scenario of the stream not going long enough. Today I have improved my seating arrangement as well. This is not still the ideal seating arrangement, but yeah, it is better than like yesterday and day before. So yeah, we are on the right track, I guess. We have already fixed the issue with respect to the bandwidth, which was basically an internet issue as well. 1 second, I will be back. 1 sec. Sense of urgency is there, still there. I assume if it is not there, people can comment. Because currently, I have like only one viewer, which is only me. But if there is someone out there, you can just say that you need to be more urgent. You need to show more sense of urgency, because the aim is always the same. We should enjoy doing this stuff, but we shouldn't be like we shouldn't be not spacing out unnecessarily as well as a so that thing needs to be controlled a bit. I have a tendency of spacing out a bit. So this and I have a tendency to be in my own head as well, which is not very ideal for streaming, because then that would stream would look like just me sitting in front of a computer, and there is no me as well in the stream. So it will be just some black screen in which you are typing some stuff. So yeah, so whenever I'm spacing out, do catch my attention, or do something to catch my attention if there is someone watching. But I don't think currently there is. But when and there, if someone is watching. So I'll be off for a minute. Yeah. So That is that. And now we need to know where, at what all places we need to insert these statements, right? So first thing first, we need to have the initialization of an int buffer, right? I think this would go into the 2D screen only, and we will have to put this code in, what do we call, the init part of the 2D screen. This is my basic feeling. Okay, and this needs to be initialized as well. And this code should go in the init part of the code as well, I guess. This is for the frame buffer that we are allocating. Byte buffer dot allocate direct as int buffer, right? 64 buffer. Capacity is of 1. This is how we allocate the frame buffer, is what the assumption is. Is there an allocate direct or something like this? This is what was there in the C code. Int buffer dot allocate 1. I think this is good enough, I guess. Yeah. So two couple of statements, the things were pretty straightforward, and we have allocated the stuff, I guess. Now the next thing we need to know is where we should be generating this frame buffer. And once we generate the frame buffer, we can try and run the code. They shouldn't ideally affect anything because we have not bound anything anywhere. So they shouldn't be ideally affecting anything. We'll do a sanity check after that. Uh, in texture handle and all, we are creating everywhere, right? As in on every draw. Role of gen, right? I think it is there in the load texture qual. Yeah, load texture. Okay, the texture handle is created only once. Okay, let us check where this creation of uh, handle is there, right? Is it being done only once or it is being done multiple times? Okay, setup textures, which is getting called multiple times. Maybe we'll create the frame buffer once in the init part and then just try running the code. This shouldn't ideally affect anything. So yeah, that is the way to move forward, I guess. Yeah, now we'll just try running the code. Yeah, as suspected, this is working pretty fine because we have not done any sort of binding and all that. So we have successfully inserted three statements of the 11th statement into the code. But let us just assume that we have done 27% of the work, which is not ideally the case, but let's be positive today. And there is also a need of urgency today. So yeah. Yeah. So where was I? We have to insert now what is there left, right? Uh, uh, bind. There are three binds, four bind statement that is happening, and yeah, there are four bind statements that is happening. So we have to check where these statements are happening first, and what are the bind statement calls, right? So bind frame buffer, one is get zero, then there is zero, then there is get zero, then there is zero, right? And then yeah, we'll first check whether there is a bind frame buffer that is getting called, right? That is the first thing we need to do. Yeah, it is not there anywhere. Maybe we will try writing a frame buffer bind, right? The draw and see what happens right after that. After the texture activation and all that. Or maybe before this, right? Maybe after the use program, we can just start with bind frame buffer and do this, right? As in GLES 20.gl frame buffer. I think that remains the same throughout. So frame buffer dot get 0, right? If we do this and write, maybe nothing gets drawn because we are drawing everything to the frame buffer. Is that possible? This is an hypothesis that I am making, but let's see whether that hypothesis is correct. Yeah, that seems to be correct. I'm getting some sort of new screen here. Black screen I'm getting. And if I bind 0, I think this should work fine. Let's check that. So with frame buffer dot get 0, I was getting some sort of an error. But with 0, I think it should be fine because 0 is apparently the default OpenGL frame buffer, or is what my assumption is. And you are correct. You are correct. So bind frame buffer statement is having some sort of a importance here. Bind frame buffer is actually giving you a sort of a way in which we can mention where this output goes. So let us try. Yeah, this is, I think, a major, not a major breakthrough, but a minor breakthrough. But at least we understood that we have inserted four things correctly. So 36% of our work is done, let us assume. And we have some sort of knowledge as well. This is all an assumption, and there is a sense of urgency. That is why we are counting percentage today. Why it is 36%? Because there are 11 statements to be inserted, and we have done 4 statements. So 36% of the work is. So we may or may not be correct, but we are under the as in the insertion because only time will tell when you get the final correct output. But at least as of now, it is going in the right direction. I'll be back in a minute. So I think this minute breaks will happen a lot because whenever I'm on the on when I'm talking, I'll always be trying to be urgent. So I might need a break because I'm not used to being this urgent. I am in general a pretty spacing out type of guy. So yeah, this is kind of not my natural flow. So that is why for me, this taking breaks is required. But yeah, I will get back to maybe if I do it for some period of time, I will get used to this speed. But as of now, I'll be taking like short breaks in between. I was thinking if I'm going on this break, I should put some sort of banner or some sort of thing like that, right? Uh, Otherwise, what will happen? No, people might jump into this and they'll be thinking, what the hell is happening? I don't hear any sound. So let's just check. Let's just check for some good photos. Right? So I'm checking for I'll be back photo. I'll be back. Okay, I think, yeah, I think this should be fine. Keep calm. We'll be back in a minute. If I put a full screen on this, if I put a full screen, I'll have to check on my other. Yeah, I think this can be my break thing. Yeah, or if I go on a break, I can just put this. Keep calm. We'll be back in a minute. Yeah, yeah, that should indicate that I am on a break. Yeah, great. Yeah, I think now I can go back to whatever I was doing. Uh, so we actually created a buffer. What if we create this buffer, do some sort of things, and then again create the. So we understood two things from the bind frame buffer thing, right? One is that bind frame buffer 0 is OpenGL frame buffer, and the other frame buffer is the frame buffer that we created. This thing I think is more or less evident now. Now we have to understand where the what is the other command left one, and where are we inserting that command? As in the generate and bind frame buffer is has like 4 5 commands in total. So only there might be like couple of other commands left. So we'll check that part first. Yeah, the shader code is fine, and what if we use this along with that get 0, right? The frame buffer texture 2D part along with that gets 0. Will that work? So what are the things that are happening in draw, right? We do a GL use program. Okay? We do a bind frame buffer, then we do all sort of bind texture and all that. And then do a draw arrays. Okay? This is all great. I mean, this all looks great. But what are we supposed to do now? Yeah, what can be our next sub goal, right? We have to be able to understand some other small things. We try switching back to the main buffer before. We try switching back then and there itself, right? We'll bind one, then we'll bind other. See what happens. Then we try and increase the distance between the binds, right? And see what happens there, right? This is this is immediate switch, right? Where am I? This is immediate switch. We'll find first this and second that. This should work well. I mean, there shouldn't be an issue ideally. It might slow down certain things, but it should work correctly. Yeah, this is as expected. What if we increase the distance of this, right? As in, we move the bind here to just before the drawer is. This matrix mode can be removed. I think this is some old artifact that I had kept from. When that is working fine, I guess. Uh, great. This is working fine, I guess. So there is no issue here. So only the draw arrays was checking only the draw. So this is an assumption, right? Only the draw array is only the draw array is actually associated with frame buffer. What do I mean by this is I'll do n number of operations between between bind frame buffer to uh, custom frame buffer and bind frame buffer to OpenGL frame buffer. And right now, what do I mean by this? I will show you. And I did n operations here, nothing happened to the final output. Now, if I move this just below this draw arrays, I feel that this will cause some sort of a issue. Is my gut feeling, might be wrong. But sadly, I'm right. Not sadly, actually. Happily, I'm right. See? So, draw arrays is somehow writing it into the correct array, correct frame buffer. So this is what I meant by that. Only the draw arrays are actually associated with frame buffer. I do a number of operations between bind frame buffer, custom frame buffer, bind frame buffer, and nothing happens. But as soon as my bind to OpenGL frame buffer moves below draw array, I get an empty screen. Yeah. So draw array is associated by default associated with a frame buffer, but the in-between operations are not. In-between operations is directly getting route, is not using the frame buffer. So we have to somehow route it correctly. Now that could be our next thing, right? As in, so what would that mean? Let's first check what are the in-between operations first, and what all they take in their take into consideration. After which we will try and route it correctly, right? I think I can use the BRB now. All small sub goal, if I do now, I'll take a minute break at least as of now, because did it stop streaming, by the way? I have a feeling that might have happened. I have a feeling. Oh no, it didn't. But I do have a drop frames. But gladly, nothing happened there. And are there any more viewers, by the way? More viewers for me? No. There is only one. But that is fine. Let's do it full screen. I'll be back in a minute. Maybe I should mute myself. I'm back. I think the poster actually works pretty fine. I checked the stream as well, and yeah, that seems to be working fine. So, which is great. Uh, we have done a minor improvement on whatever we were doing, which is great. Now, where were we? Acha, we actually swapped back certain things, right? And this helped us. We are doing reverse engineering to the max here. But yeah, this is fine. We don't have like lot of material in this regard. I mean, I could hardly see any material with Google search, but we were stuck with the question. But at least we have done some improvement on the initial understanding. We can move further and then try and understand what is happening. So next sub goal is what are the statements that are coming in between, right? Uh, so we see that we see that there is an active texture, bind texture. Basically, we are passing parameters and we are passing position handle and the texture coordinate handle and color handle as well. But color, V color we are never using. I think this is anyway never getting used. This can be removed. Or are we using this? Color? Are we using this color anywhere? I mean, it was present initially, but I'm not sure whether we are using any sort of color here. I mean, V color in the fragment vertex shader is never getting used. It's not even received in vertex shader. Fragment shader, are we using this V color? I don't think we are using this. We'll try removing and then checking the code. What is the point of sending unnecessary variables, right? Just remove it here. Move it here. There is a color handle as well, I guess. Here. Also can be removed. We can remove it here. We'll try and run the code now to see if it is working. It is working perfect. So yeah, this was just double check with this going above. Yeah, this is working perfectly. So that I think on this. Yeah, this is working perfectly as of now. So I think that was a useless variable. So we have just removed the line to make sure that we are not focusing on things that are not necessary. We'll keep our focus on things that are required for drawing. Um, yeah. So yeah, I got a bit spaced out in between, but I was drinking water as well, so that can be excused. So as I said before, I have a tendency of getting spaced out. The sense of urgency that I've put in this particular stream is not natural to me, and I have a tendency of wandering, hence the name Wanderlust as well. But today we are trying out the sense of urgency theme in the stream. So yeah, so if I do a bit of spacing out, I think this can be pointed out by anyone, but I don't think that will happen currently, at least, because we have zero other viewers. But at some point of time, hopefully, that will happen. But I think, yeah. Um, so, what we have to focus now next is what is happening in between these two switches, right? Obviously, the bind buffer is somehow connected with this draw. But is bind buffer connected with uh, what is the things that are happening in between, right? Okay, we are sending these attributes to M program, and M program we are using on okay. What if we bind this? We use this texture on. There is one more command, right? This bind texture frame buffer texture 2D, and we put that texture handle instead of this. What will happen, right? Maybe we can just add this frame buffer texture 2D GL frame buffer, GLES 20 GL attachment 0, 2D, and give the texture handle. Let's try that. This is where things are getting a bit demotivating, I guess, because but sense of urgency is the stream of the theme today. I mean, theme of the stream today. Sorry for the slip. So yeah, we should be fine. But yeah, this is kind of demotivating now. What is this frame buffer texture 2D? We'll try using it anyway. GL frame buffer texture 2D. What is happening in GL frame buffer texture 2D, right? GL frame buffer attachment 0, texture 2D, texture and 0. GL color attachment 0. Is that the one we are using? Yep. GL texture 2D. And then texture handle. Then finally 0. 0. Okay, let's run this first. See if it causes some sort of an issue. It doesn't cause any issue. I mean, we are attaching this stuff to some other thing as well, the texture. But since we are not using the frame, any other frame buffer, it is not causing any other issue, I guess. But then now we'll try and understand what this means, right? GL frame buffer texture 2D. And what are these variables that we are using, parameters that we are using. Attaches a texture image to a frame buffer object. Okay. Okay. Please read the description. GL GL frame buffer texture 2D attaches the texture image specified by texture and level as one of the logical buffers of the currently bound frame buffer object. Attachments specify whether the texture image should be attached to the frame buffer's color, depth, or stencil buffer. A texture image may not be attached to the default frame of buffer object name 0. Acha. We cannot attach a texture image to the OpenGL frame buffer, but for all the other frame buffer, we can attach a texture apparently. If texture is not 0, the value of as in we had to texture handle, right? Not texture handle. Yeah, but If texture is not zero, what is texture? The fifth parameter that we have. Okay, if texture is not zero, the value of attachment object type for this GL texture, the value of GL name is set to texture, the value of level is set to level. If texture is cube map texture, any previous attachment to the attachment logical buffer of the currently bound is broken. If texture is zero, the current image, if any, attached to the attachment logical buffer of the currently bound frame buffer object is detached. The value of so if we do this to zero, will it detach the will it cause any sort of issue with respect to the low we do the load texture, right? If we do it to zero, will it cause some sort of issue to will it cause some sort of issue to the current uh, attachment, right? Current OpenGL frame buffer. Try that. If this breaks the OpenGL frame buffer, then well and good, I guess. Doesn't do anything of that sort. Because that is not there, I guess, as in I mean everything is fine and dandy with respect to the OpenGL frame buffer. OpenGL frame buffer didn't care anything for this frame buffer texture 2D. But yeah, maybe the next question could be how to copy custom frame buffer to OpenGL frame buffer. Custom to default frame buffer. So we see some sort of thing, similar thing here. I think we can dig into this. Uh, A GL blit frame buffer is there, which does not work apparently for OpenGL ES2.0 GL blit frame buffer. But there is some sort of other thing that can be done apparently. We can check what is this other thing is. Uh, so there are multiple things here, right? One is what is the we made a frame buffer, generated a frame buffer. What is its default size, right? Is it same as the viewport of the OpenGL frame buffer? And second is what should be done with respect to copying, right? We are copying the frame buffer since the blit frame buffer is not happening. How will we copy frame buffer one frame buffer to other? That is something we need to take care of as well. So these two things we can look into. I need a minute break now, I guess. Uh, yeah, I need a minute break now. So let's keep calm. I'll be back. Maybe I'll play some song as well. Maybe that will help. Before that, I'll start a song. Okay, let me get a song here. Yeah. automatically stopped, is it? I'm not sure why that happened. Uh, yeah, but I thought it would automatically continue playing, but I guess I was wrong. Also, this blur screen thing is not going away. I'm not sure what is happening. Yeah, so I'm back. I have there needs to be a sense of urgency. Sense of urgency is easier to kick in when you're starting the stream, right? But once it's a couple of hours in, it becomes more difficult. After 4 hours, it becomes more difficult. And maybe at the end of the stream, it becomes extremely difficult. But you have to try. That is that is mandatory, I guess. And I easily space out. This I have told you multiple times today itself, a couple of hours, but I have to resist that temptation. Spacing out is such a good feeling, I guess. I mean, you get in your own thoughts, in your own head, and you start dreaming, which is kind of good also. But here, when you are performing, right, streaming is some sort of performance only. So because it's not very natural to keep on keep on narrating whatever is happening to in your head, right? So in that particular time, spacing out is not very ideal, I would say. But yeah, so coming back to this, where were we? I don't remember exactly where I was. Uh, we tried this GL frame buffer texture 2D and nothing happened. This I remember. Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, now I remember. We were trying to make sure that we were able to copy the frame buffer, but apparently the GL blit frame buffer is not working. Yeah, it becomes very now it is we are in like excavating through like very niche kind of things, I guess. But this happens usually, but in this case, I'm not sure why. Yeah, this should have been something very straightforward, right? Uh, what is this guy saying? Tested in OpenGL4, GLB frame buffer not supported in OpenGL ES 2.2. I fixed errors in the previous answer, generalized into a function that can support two frames. Okay. Copy frame buffer texture. Okay, we'll examine it in our studio. Copy from custom frame buffer to What I want to copy, this is some other question by the way. I want to copy the OpenGL main frame buffer to a FBO. Facing out, facing out alert. I want to copy the OpenGL main frame buffer to a FBO, which attaches to texture object. Then I want to transfer the color buffer and the buffer to the to texture object. I use GL frame buffer, but the texture is black. What is the right way, my code? Okay, he generates a frame buffer, he creates a texture. Okay, then he colors the texture. What does that mean? Uh, this is using GL frame buffer, so yeah, this goes out the window. But facing out alert 2. Bind texture that used as color attachment. Bind the texture used as color attachment on source frame buffer. Bind destination frame buffer. Bind, 1 second. Drinking water, this is not spacing out. My Android program must use glblit frame buffer function to copy frame buffer object, but glblit frame buffer function is only supported on OpenGL ES 3.0 plus devices. I want to support Open 2.0. Acha. But I can use OpenGL 3.0, right? Why am I restricting myself to OpenGL 2.0? Because as of now, OpenGL 2.0 and 3.0 are, yeah, migration from 2.0 to 3.0 is not going to be that easy, or that might take some time. So I think first we will see 3. What is the difference between this? Can be, I'll just park this as a question, but I don't think we should start off with that. Amount of effort required on what is the minimum in which 3.0 is supported. Yeah, these two are good questions to start off, I guess. So, amount of effort required. But this we will park as of now. I think that it will be our sub goal was to use frame buffer. Now, if we, in order to use frame buffer, if we have a sub goal of OpenGL 2.0 to OpenGL 3.0, I think we are like, it will take a lot of time. But let us first see, is it possible to actually transfer data from frame buffer to somewhere else in case of 2.0? It should be possible, right? And then we'll try and do that. Migration we might take up at some later time. That is what my current thing is, but later it might change depending on. Our main goal is moving water droplet. Our sub goal is to actually try and use a frame buffer. And I'm not currently in a mood to have a sub goal of migrating OpenGL 2.0 to OpenGL 3.0. So yeah, that we can take it up a bit later, I guess. Yeah, if you heard the sigh was like very original because uh, man, you start off with those one goal and not sure what you go through to get into something. But yeah, which bind texture that used as color attachment on source frame buffer, bind destination frame buffer, draw full screen quad, fetch data from bound texture in frame shader and put. Okay, okay, So this is saying bind texture to source frame buffer, then bind destination frame buffer, then draw full screen quad, fetch data from bound texture in fragment shader and put fragment color. Okay, what does this work? What? I I think this is an overwhelm alert also, I guess, because uh, we are 2 hours in and I'm not sure whether I need some break as well. But yeah, this is difficult, man. I mean, having a sense of urgency 2 hours in is a bit difficult. Initially, I think it was pretty easy, but now it has become a bit difficult, especially considering the fact that it is a newer concept and I have to move. Usually, I take time to see, let this seep in and all that. But currently, having this urgency is pretty difficult, I guess. But yeah, do we have any viewers, by the way? Do we have tasks here? Not being watched live by anyone. With added urgency, I put. I think we can ask with sense of urgency, right? That is a good thing, I guess. Added urgency, what does that mean? With sense of urgency. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense of urgency. What is being done in the code, by the way? The Stack Overflow code. So let us first understand what we are doing. Right? Well, we'll just first summarize the things that we have done and then understand what we are doing right currently. So we were initially trying to make a drop of water move down, and whilst doing that, we understood that the texture needs to be input into the pipeline again and again so that we can have consequent frames that come about. Now, for this to happen, we had to have a frame buffer. This is what we understood by reading through the article. Now, we were having a goal of how to use a frame buffer to do, we will do some sort of manipulation in the frame buffer and copy stuff from frame buffer to the main OpenGL default frame buffer. For this, we got some Stack Overflow code, and we went through and we got some 11 commands or 11 statements which were thought to be the main things that need to be done for this copying to happen. We successfully inserted the initialization of the frame buffer, and we were able to bind the frame buffer and check what all happens when we bind the frame buffer before a draw element happens and after a draw array happens, right? As in, if we bind the OpenGL texture, OpenGL frame buffer before the draw elements, we got good answer. But if we did after the draw elements, we were getting stuff of what we were not getting anything basically, because the bound frame buffer was the one that we had created, and the OpenGL frame buffer had nothing basically. Right? No, I didn't get what was happening. If we bound the yeah, that part seems a bit foggy. But moving on, so we were now checking how to copy stuff from one frame buffer to another frame buffer. And doing that, we understood that in OpenGL ES 3.0, there is a way of doing it. But in case of OpenGL 2.0, it doesn't seem to be very straightforward. I mean, there are things that can be done, but it doesn't seem to be straightforward. One guy was suggesting an algorithm in which he was saying bind the texture to the frame buffer, then bind the default frame buffer, uh, and now you can use the shader code and you can get whatever needs to be done, right? As in, you can do whatever needs to be done using the fragment shader code by using any default fragment shader code that was initially available. What do you mean default fragment shader code? In which you just pass the texture and you draw it correctly. You draw it. But yeah, that doesn't seem to be, I guess. That all seems great, but that doesn't seem to be uh, pretty easy, I guess. I think I'll take a break now. I think uh, maybe for a half an hour. I think things have to seep in a bit. I mean, I'm also not used to the speed. That is also one reason. And this is also not very easy to navigate. I mean, so this is a new concept as well. So that might also be a reason. But at least for now, I think I'll take like some 10 15 minutes break maybe, and then come back. I'll end the stream and then I'll again start. I think that is better, I guess, because there is no point in stretching a stream just for the sake of stretching it when I'm doing nothing. So maybe in a half an hour, maybe I'll come back and then maybe start it again. I mean, with if you need to have sense of urgency, you need to have sense of urgency, right? It cannot be like you have like some 1 hour gap in between, and then for the sake of urgency, you show some sort of urgency. So, uh, yeah, with a heavy heart, I'm ending the stream. But this is some difficult thing to navigate, man. For me, at least, currently it is seeming very difficult. In the end, everything once you understand stuff, no, things look trivial after that. As in, then while explaining to some other person, you will be like, hey, "This is such an easy concept. Why are you not able to grasp?" But we always tend to forget that So initially, when we were navigating through the initial part, right, it always seemed extremely difficult. But yeah, by repetition and by figuring out there are things that click for you, right? When you figure those things, I think things become far easier for you. But yeah, currently I think I need a half an hour break maybe. Hopefully by half an hour I can come back. And then I can do this uh, task again. Because then only I can have a renewed vigor of sense of urgency and all. Yeah, so I'll be back in half an hour hopefully. Thank you.